Morning, everybody. It's 8:40 on this Wednesday morning, and there's a bunch of data coming out this morning. Some of it already out. I have not seen mortgage apps. It's kind of a low-level number, so they'll get around to reporting it when they get around to reporting it. And it's generally lower. And with interest rates where they are, I'm sure that the refi section of it is going to be much lower. ADP, a big miss. Expectations were 150,000, came in at 89,000. Don't know whether that's good news or bad news, really, because uh, it was large corporations that had the biggest losses and small corporations that had the biggest gains. Those small companies tend to be in the hospitality business, and frankly, transportation and hospitality have been horrendous. I mean, uh, Carnival Cruise, which, couldn't tell us how great things were, is now down just since the beginning of July from 19 to 12 and change. And that doesn't even take into consideration how great things were at 52. So, or, in 21 when things were great at 31 and a half. So I don't put really a lot of weight behind that particular industry. Although UAL, another company that cannot make money, ordered 110 more Boeing jets. Boeing was the only Dow stock that was up yesterday. Um, so on the job keepers versus the job changers on the ADP number, um, gains in wages 5.9% if you kept your job, 9%, 9% if you changed your job. Um, I don't know about you, but 9% job gain, which they're, you know, very excited about it, broke 10%. 9 or 10% in wage gain translates into inflation, folks. You can't add that kind of gain and not expect to see one of two things happen. Margins decrease because cost of goods sold goes up, or they lose money. There really aren't a lot of alternatives in there. Another interesting thing that came out in the questioning by Steve Leisman of the woman from ADP, striking workers are considered employed. They're not getting a paycheck, but they haven't lost their job yet. So I'm kind of curious to see how that, kind of filters through it. Intel carving off another piece for an IPO. Stock is up 86 cents at 31 and change. It's still down just 60% from when the new CEO, the $180 million man, took over and destroyed more than that in equity. Cal Maine last night, poor earnings. And frankly, I don't know that this is good news or bad news either. On the good news side, um, egg prices have gone from $2.47 down to $1.37. It's a 48% decline year over year. That's great. And, maybe people who couldn't afford to feed their kids eggs and were giving them peanut butter and jelly or cereal can now move back to giving them something that, number one, is a hot breakfast, and number two is actually good for you. So we'll have to see how that goes. In the meantime, Cal-Maine, which you would think of as a defensive food supply chain company, is trading at 42, down 5.5. That is also a huge drop. We're talking about you know a company that was 65 earlier this year. Um, McCarthy out, government basically in a new gray area. Can they do anything? Can they have votes on anything? It's kind of a split decision, and nobody really knows. Okay, FRLN. This is a bio, and it is Freeline Therapeutics. Um, This is a company that had positive phase 2 trials on something called Goucher, Gaucher, which is a genetic disease. Um, it hampers the ability of the body to filter, and so it's especially debilitating, and has long-term implications of some fairly extreme treatment for the liver and spleen, because that's where the filtering takes place. So it's a missing enzyme, and it looks like there's a step in the right direction. FRLN. Don't get too excited about the stock, which is up substantially. It's trading at $5.42 today. That's up $1.64 or 43%. But wasn't that long ago, back in May, where they reversed the stock 1 for 15, giving it an adjusted high of 325 and a low of $2.10. So the fact that it traded as high as 7.25 this morning, decent on the, not trying to demean what they're accomplishing. I'll just say that 7.25, today's high, with a last of $5.35 now, is a far way from $325. This company's only been around for 2.5 years. So great for people with that disease, not so great for the shareholders. And one last mention that I want to make is I heard one of the idiots on TV talking about the KRE. As you know, KRE is the regional bank index. And they were talking about how Bank of America is acting so poorly that it's acting as if it is a regional and not a major bank. And it just kind of struck me as funny because, being the old fart that I am, I remember the last time we were talking about banks. And when they tell me that the KRE is selling for 80% of book value, I question that, because how do you actually know what book value is? When you have a bond market that can move 10 or 12 basis points in a day, Book value is unknowable. It's as unknowable as when Congress was using the banking industry as its own personal ATM with billions of dollars in fines that came out of nowhere that were immediately settled. So, you know, if there's a an issue of duration risk, which doesn't seem to be getting any better, and bonds continue to fall, how do you actually know what the value of the portfolios that are sitting on the books actually are? I mean, you know, maybe somebody is much smarter than me and has an algorithm that they're using, but those don't always work either. Think about all those great quant funds like long term capital, where they were the geniuses in the room, and guess what? They didn't get it right, and they dramatically harmed the banking business. Okay, and so based on those bonds, the chart on the screen is the Japanese yen, which had a huge bounce yesterday and is right back to giving it up this morning. The difference between where the Jap yen was a week or so ago, which was trading at around 68.68, which was 145 yen to the dollar. To show you, people were talking about 150 yen being a real problem. The difference between 145 and 150 is the difference between where it was 2 weeks ago and yesterday's low. Yesterday's low was the equivalent of 149. So, this continues to be a problem. It may get a technical bounce the same way that the bonds may get a technical bounce. But this is not over. Rest of the futures markets, we have oil down again. But when I look at the chart and I see, even though it's down $1.80 at 87 and a half, I look at the weekly and I say, well, let's take a look. On the nearby, it hasn't even gotten back to this 85 area where it broke out most recently. Again, as I said, on the weekly, it's a little clearer. Again, has not gotten back to the breakout. And while the 5 week is trying to roll over, it's done that before and turned right back to the upside. This is still a bull market. And the only thing that's well, there are two things that might be influencing it here, and that is economic slowdown, or maybe the fools in Washington are sneaking a little bit more out of the SPR. We have, by the way, at 10:30, the inventory for crude. It's due for a drawdown. I believe it was a drawdown. Let me just check to make sure, folks. It is due to be a drawdown of 2.17 million barrels. So we'll see what that looks like. Okay, Intel taking itself apart to become a higher price stock. Great. Wonder what'll be left. Calmaine, I already told you, down over 12% on the earnings miss. Palantir up 40 cents on a contract with Bloomberg. Ford, comprehensive offer, wake me when they vote on it. Ford 12.10 up 3 cents. So not can't get too expensive. I can't get too excited about that. Trinity, the rail car maker, delivered below projections. Stock is down 85 cents. Floor buy at UBS from neutral. Boeing, that 110. Well, this one says 50 plus 50 options. The headline from United says they bought 110. Helen of Troy beat by a dime, and the stock is down 5%. And A10 Networks um, expects, this is a guidance, expects Q3 revenues of 56 and a half to 58 and a half, Q4 70 to 80. Industry headwinds caused by delays pushing deals into future periods. The short version of that, the stock is down 18%. All right, folks, that's about it. As far as the stock futures go, before ADP, we were up 40 in the Dow, up 40 in the NASDAQ, and up 7 in the S&P. Afterwards, we got to up about 60, which is where we are right now in the Dow. We had the NASDAQ, let me just give you, up 13 in the S&P. So that's done really not much of anything. Up 7, up 12, up 13. As I said, Dow up 68. NASDAQ is up about 77, and that is pretty close to the high of the day. Be careful out there, folks. I'll be back tonight.